Taanai nung ni upakakta-katekto. Nasa otine aperçu yaktu katekto.
Inuksilangittia.
Tappa inuksilitain nartugu utlumi.
Here we are today on Curzon Home Cinema as part of the Canada Now Film Festival, which is being put together by Telefilm Canada. And today we have the great moment of chatting to Zacharias Kunuk, who is the director of the fabulous One Day in the Life of Noah. And I might get this wrong, but Piugatuk. How would I say that right, Noah? Is that good? Piugatuk?
Yes, Piugatuk.
So that's great. Well, I'm going to introduce you now, Zacharias. Can you tell me, obviously lots of people will know you from your great work, the very award-winning Anthony Jurat, The Fast Runner, which was like an explosion for the world, showing us this almost impossible world we'd never seen before, and the Inuit culture. You followed that up with the journals of Kunuk Rasmussen and obviously Searchers. And now you have this new film, which for me, watching it, I just found it so fabulous. Such an in-depth look at the culture and the life, and done in such a quiet, secretive, almost special way through a conversation. So can you tell me a little bit about what was special about 1961 and why you wanted to go back in history and look at what happened to the Inuits in this year?
Yeah, I've heard of such a meeting out on the ice in 1961. My late partner, Paris Kuritalik, knew about this because he was part of the Noapiwatu clan in his camp. And I've heard this story from him, and now he's passed on. We wanted to do something. We wanted to do something special, or because it takes 21 days to make a feature film. But what if we do one day in the life and try to shoot it in one day, but we end up shooting in a week because of the locations of and weather changing all the time. We have to stop sometimes when it's too cold for cameras. So what we wanted to do here was we wanted to do the story of how our culture, living on the land, we're now being ordered to move into communities because there was the Canadian government was starting education. You're a 5-year-old, you have to be in school. But what happened in 1961, people up in the Arctic, we are still living like our ancestors before us, moving around with the animals. And in Noapiwatu case, he always lived in this particular spot, and he moved around. He has a spring camp where he does his walrus hunt, caching meat for the winter for people to eat and dogs to have dog food. Because sometimes up in the Arctic, especially in this latitude, we lose the sun. In December, we lose the sun. It comes back in the middle of January. It starts to come back, and now in the spring, in May, June, we lose the night. So it's sunny all the time. That's how this climate works up here, and people just follow the climate, where they just follow the animals. I wanted to do this one day because this one day changed everything. Um, First of all, Noah talks about of how the Anglican priests he guided to another region to Christianize the Nechilik people. He talks about that in this film, of how he been working with the white man, and he's not very impressed, as he talks in this film. We wanted to do this because this is the time we all changed. Even me, I'm born in Noapilatuk's camp, but we've been moving around off the island to hunting caribou. But it was the time they were luring Inuit off the land into communities and using tactics like in the Canadian government pays family allowance to every Canadian family for their children every month. The more children you have, the more money you make. But they used this gimmick to lure children to school. If you don't send your kids to school, we could stop your family allowance. And in that time, because Inuit were living off the land, hunting animals, because it's a hunting culture. We're always hunting, looking for food, for clothing. But in 1961, fabric, the cloth is already being used for parkas and pants. You can see it in this film. And I'm very lucky because we still have these elders that live this life, so they can stitch these costumes the way they saw it and the way they made it. And lucky for me, there's still one more person living that was in this meeting, who I had a chance to talk for a week with people who used to live in Noapilatuk's camp. And we all sat down every afternoon with these elders. I sat down and talked to them in our language, what was happening, what was being said, and what was the white man saying, what did he want. And we used sugar in this film. We talk about sugar a lot because in that time we used to run out of sugar a lot. That's why we're using sugar to we're out of sugar. We have to go resupply to another camp. But then this man, what they call boss, because in Inuktitut, Angayuka translates to boss. So they call him Angayuka, which translates to boss. And he had brought sugar and biscuits and butter, frozen butter, which is normal. I mean, we lived with it. I mean, when times were changing, first time we saw fruits, first time we saw apples and bananas. First time we saw tomato in a can, frozen. A lot of new southern food was being introduced, and we were craving tobacco. They were craving for tobacco. They would run out of tobacco and sugar because they're always living on the land. that was the time that we wanted to show this, and what was being said, we tried to do it right. We always try to do it right because we're thinking 100 years from now, when we're long gone, uh, people will study these films, and we're trying to get it correct. Get it correct first. When the culture does it, that's as close as it gets. That what goes through our head.
Because it's very interesting the way you deal with the subject. Because in one way, what the white man comes to say is, hey, we're going to give you education, we'll give you a nice house with a stove. It sounds very plausible. You shouldn't let your child work, your child's so young, they should. So, in one moral way, it can seem very nice, but the way you show the family at the beginning in their habitat, waking up in the morning, drinking tea, so happy to have iceberg water in his tea, and his lack of desire to have his culture taken away from him. But it's put in this way of making it sound so positive and all about the children. Um, can you talk about this moral balance, the life of the Inuit against the life of the Canadian government and the dominance? Because in the end, there is no choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This time of the era is it's during the Cold War. The Americans have come up here. They built this dew line stations all over the Arctic. There were more Americans up here than Canadians. So, I mean, what America does great is they steal islands, and there's lots of islands up in the Arctic. This was the time when the Canadian government thought the Americans are going to take over the Arctic, take over the islands. They started luring people and moving people around, claiming all these islands are Canadian islands. So that's what they were starting to do, I guess, for sovereignty. But we didn't know that. Wait a minute. My phone is ringing. Excuse me.
No worries.
Just. But this was the time school was starting, and we now had to translate for our parents. And I'm caught in between. That's why I love this. I was so interested in this film because I was caught in the middle, where in 1965, 66, I had to be transported from off the land and brought here to Igloolik to learn English. So I could translate for my parents. So I could translate for the white man what they're saying. That's what was happening in that time, and the white man never talks about inflation. So $2 a month. They're saying they're using gimmicks like your house is going to cost $2 a month. In 1961, that was the current rate. But they never talk about inflation. But in 2020, this same house will be like $1,700 a month. They never talk about that. And so you have a nice house, you have a stove, you'll be warm, kids will go to school. and you could have a government job. But these are gimmicks that they were using to lure. We wanted to show that, and it happened. It may not be written down, but it must be written down in their journals because they were sent out to do these jobs to lure people. But in our oral history, a meeting happened, and these are the same people that were talking about how they now have to move to Igloolik, where they're going to start living with strangers, and they knew that when people gather in one place, trouble is bound to happen. They knew about that. So even though they didn't want to, they had to. So this is the story.
Because it's interesting for me the way you show that Western culture has already become part of Inuit life. Because even inside the igloo, we see on the wall the fashion pictures. There's the Queen. He starts by reading the Bible. How much influence had that come in, and was that religious before that?
Excuse me. Before Christianity, Inuit lived in shamanism. They lived by the rules of taboos of women don't have to eat animal parts, certain animal parts. That was the life. And then Christianity came, which is almost the same, but it was so same that the change took over right away. Into man. Yeah, the blend was so same. Like in the Inuit law, is you have to be kind to animals because you eat them. You don't hunt more than you need. If you see a sick animal, you have to kill it right away. Don't make fun of animals because animals pay back. Like stories like we were told, like stories like a hunter who loved to eat polar bear tongue so much he kills one, and while it's still dying, he takes the tongue off and cooks it and eats it while he's watching the animal die. The animal pays back, not to him, but to his loved ones, where his son started to have mouth problems and this great just dies from animals pay back. That's what we were told. So we always have to be kind to animals, but we're also hunting them for food. When Christianity came, it was something like that, but our parents, from the day they were born, they were trained to listen to their mothers and parents. They were trained to listen to somebody who's older than them with no questions. That's how our parents were trained. But for me, I know about this because I went through that training process. But you go to school, it's not like that. The Southern society is not like that. If you disagree, you get a lawyer. You go to court if you have to, or something like that. That's how I'm seeing that. Because our parents were ordered to listen. If a white man tells you to do something, even though you don't want to do it, you have to agree. That was going on in 1961. Even though they don't want to, they had to listen. That's the way we are brought up, man. And I wanted to show that to these people living off the land, being home and then being ordered to move. I wanted to show that.
Would you say that this was the moment that the traditional Inuit culture came to an end in some way?
It started to end when Christianity came because mercenaries came first. First of all, the whalers came first up here. Well, they didn't do it. They were not religious. They were just hunters of whales. And we're hunters of whales too, so we helped them. So we blend well, but then Christianity came and they're ordering us to change, and we're trained to listen, so we listen. And then we started getting baptized and getting Christian names. Like for me, Zacharias is not an Inuktitut name. My Inuktitut name, I have 5 Inuktitut names, but I had to get a Bible name when I got baptized. And lucky for us, they only did it to us. Imagine, I'm now imagining what if they were putting names on the land from the Bible land. Like if I wanted to go fishing, I'm going to Galilee. I'm going to go to Galilee and fish today. Good thing that they didn't name the land from the Bible, only us humans. So that was happening. Christianity came, that changed, and now from trying to survive, now people are preparing to die. Elders are preparing to die because of Christianity, but you look at the whole world, I don't know. What do I know?
No, it's a very big point, and it's interesting for them, like the changing of cultures. It reminded me a bit of Aboriginal cultures had the same thing to Inuit that was happening all around the world. The other thing that's so striking about the way you make films is you make them so beautiful to look at. Hair, it must have been so hard to film. It seemed like there was so much white around. You're in one meeting place. But you make the camera make all these faces interesting with the ice on the face. Can you talk a bit about filming in such a harsh terrain?
Yeah, we do that. I mean, I've filmed a lot of winter scenes. It's called where, because the sun is always changing, moving, clouds are always moving, and so that's what we always watch out for. Continuity. That's what we watch out for, because we want to do it right, authentic, what they call it. We want to do it right, and the sun is already being covered by clouds, so we have to stop and wait. And we wait an hour, the light will change and will look different. So we always have to watch out for this. And most of the time, we're shooting wide. That's what we do, because you look at the frame. There's a lot of things happening in the frame, and we focus into one, like somebody's face, or we don't see what's happening around it. But if you go wide, a lot of things are happening. People are talking, kids are playing, somebody's building an igloo, the dog is moving around. So that's why we want to run the camera a little bit longer, because sometimes when people talk and when they stop talking, we just keep the camera on their face and something change in their face, and that's what we wait for.
And you said you wanted originally to film it in one day. When did you know that it was going to take a week?
Um, the shooting locations, we wanted to be in the right place where they take off. That camp is where Nopiwatu lived. These are the actual places. And when they go out, we found this spot where there was a small iceberg where we set up our camp to film. But our actual crew camp is about 5 miles away. So each day, every morning, we wake up, we have breakfast. People are putting on their costumes, makeup. And by 7 o'clock, we're on a trail, very cold trail, pulled by skidoos, 5 skidoos pulling actors and crew, camera, equipment, uh, because we don't want to leave our equipments out there, or maybe polar bears might come and destroy them. Well, every day we go back and forth, and so that's how we work. We take coffee breaks, and nowadays with cell phones, that's new. iPod is new. When we started, it was never there. Now we see people with iPhones and iPods taking pictures, selfies. I really noticed that because before iPod, when we started, we filmed at an outlet. There was nothing like that. Now in churches, um, as a director, I'm going inside the igloo to see if the set is all set, ready for camera, and I see people who are going to pretend that they're going to die are taking selfies of themselves. So this is new, but life is always changing. Yeah, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're trying to uh, record history as it was.
Mm. It's very interesting you're saying you're recording history, because through the film we watch these brilliant performances. Apieta Kanutiak playing Noah, and Kib Bodnia playing the government emissary. How did you choose them? How did you choose the translator? And what was it important when you were casting them that made them right?
Okay. And one day in the life of Noah Piwat, we have this translator who had just learned how to speak a little bit of English. And the idea there, we had the idea that these translators do a lot of mistranslations.
Mm.
You can tell. People are laughing, they're happy, and the white man think they agree now, and he's happy, and we're all happy. And misunderstandings going on, and we try to show that in this film, where a translator is translating some and not translating. So he's new at this too, and trying to do his job. So yeah, that's what we wanted to show in this film. A lot of mistranslations, misunderstandings, what's going on, because we're talking two cultures who have two different languages, and try to communicate and using the translator who's going to make a lot of mistakes. We wanted to show that too.
Mm. And how did you choose the actors, the main three actors?
We've been at this for quite a bit. We chose Apayata to play Noam because he's the grandson. He's part of the family. The translator, we used Ben before in churches, and he's a good actor, so he's just acting what he's good at. Yeah, these are a lot of actors that we used before who are good actors. When we mean good actors, actors that can get into characters because they're acting characters because it's not them what they're doing. It's the people who can get into these characters is what we're looking for, and they're the best. And we just work with all kinds of ages, children. We just tell them because they know that one day they're going to be on the screen, they're going to see themselves. So they try to behave. They do a really good job.
Yeah, really good job. You wait until the end to show us Noah. Throughout the whole film, I was wondering, who's this Noah guy? Did he really live? Is this true? What is so? Can you talk about that footage at the end of the film because it's so powerful and because it comes after we've got to like the character and know him? It seems almost sad at the end when we see him.
Yeah, we filmed the real Noah a bit when he was alive. What he was doing. He was bringing culture back. He was bringing the storytelling and the ayaya songs, traditional songs that he was bringing back. Even drum dancing, he was bringing back drum dancing because Noah is an Anglican. His Anglican minister is telling him, you have to be born again. You have to change. You have to throw away all these old things and become new. The Bible says you have to become new, be born again. So the translation to that was get rid of your caribou clothes, get rid of your songs, get rid of your traditional songs and become new. And that was the translation. But Noah knew that some are good and some are bad, and he wanted to show the good side. These songs are not all bad. So when in 1992, when I did the traditional song documentary, I wanted to learn what these songs are. What are they singing? Because me as a young man, I'm listening to these songs and they all sound the same. Same tune, boring, same tune. As a young man, I wanted to understand what lyrics are saying. They're saying, they're telling stories. So what Noam wanted to bring that back, and we filmed him when we did Ayaya songs, and we have this footage of him singing. Yeah, he was a real man.
Mm. And a couple of final questions. One is, how important is it to you and to your people that you're making films that are telling stories from their perspective?
It's very important to us because when we walk the land, we see evidence that people built stone rings here and there, hunting blind when they used to use bow and arrow. Because they've been here 4,000 years and some stupid guy from Europe comes and change all that. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. We want to save our culture, even though when they try to change us. But this is the climate. Why did we get here? Why are we here? It's always on my head. Why aren't we down south fighting with the Indians? Why are we up here? Maybe we ran away from wars, and this is peace. Um, I'm always interested in why we are here. Why in this cold, where there's hardly any plants growing, and solid ice and snow and rocks, but people knew how to live and find the animals under the snow. That's the beauty, and that's what we want to show. We want to retrain our youth that people were here for a purpose. People lived shorter lives because it was harder for them. Now we have technology, and we're using new technology, blending in with old technology. It works, and that's what we're doing. We're blending technology.
Mm. The film is showing in the UK as part of the Canada Now Film Festival on Curzon Home Cinema, and obviously Telefilm Canada are interested in it. How have you found that Canada of today are interested in telling the Inuit story and in trying to keep the culture of the Inuits alive today?
I don't know. I mean, we're just doing our stories because a lot of times what I have seen is a lot of mistakes done by Southern filmmakers about the Arctic. And famous films like The Map of the Human Heart, I saw what we don't do inside the igloo. I saw people in their sleeping bags and around and a fire in our sea oil lamp torch like Olympic torch. And that's not how we do it. I mean, we don't abuse our sea oil lamps like that. I wanted to do it right. Do it right. Everybody sleep side by side, and women attend the kudlif, the sea oil lamp, all night to keep the room warm. Uh, there's steps. There's a lot of things that we haven't done. What Inuit have done. Up to stars. Stars have names. Land have names. These are shamanism is one area that I'm interested, trying to touch a little bit of it. When Harry Potter came out, this is what we've been talking about. uh, but yeah, there's so much to do yet.
Yeah. Zacharias, thank you so much for your time and making such a wonderful film. I can't wait to see the next film and the continuation of telling these important stories that we all need to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.